Kat O'Sullivan, welcome to the Star Coach Show.
It's great to be here. Love it.
I have been looking forward to it. I felt immediate energy with you when we did our exploratory call. And what we're going to be talking about today is when shift happens, we need to make magic happen. And when it's time to make magic happen, what does that look like? So that's what Kat and I are going to be diving into today. And stay tuned because we've got so many interesting paths we're going to walk. Let me tell you first a little bit about who Kat is and what got me excited to get her in front of all of you. Kat has a brand new book. Congratulations for that. From Doubt to Do, Navigating the Pathway to Possibility. Right there. Like when I opened my email and saw that, I was like, oh, yeah, this lady probably needs to be on my show. She is a best-selling author, keynote speaker, and a lifelong change maker. With her over 25 years of experience in driving personal and organizational transformation, she brings that forward in everything she does, including this book that I was just talking about and the conversation that we're about to have. So, here at the Star Coach Show, I am so invested in connecting you, the audience, with incredible people like Kat, because I believe that the world is filled with wisdom and possibility, and we all sort of engage with challenges in our own way. Yet when we can learn from the wisdom that abounds, then we can all just lean into life a little more eagerly, with a little less hesitation. And that's exactly what our conversation is going to be about today. Now, if this is your first time to the Star Coach Show, welcome. So excited to have you here. And if you're watching us on YouTube, I want to say hi, and you can grab all the links for this episode right below this video. If you're listening wherever the Star Coach Show plays, be sure to go to the show notes for this episode so that you can connect with Kat and learn more about me and the Star Coach Show. But just subscribe wherever you listen because you don't want to miss a minute of the content we have with incredible guests like Kat. So with that being said, once again, welcome, Kat. And this whole concept of when shift happens, it's time to make magic happen. What is it about just that statement that kind of lights you up?
Well, let's face it, especially now, but always shift happens. You know, I mean, most of the time or a lot of the time it's unexpected, but then there's also times when we choose to make a shift in our life. And when we do that or when it happens to us, we've got a choice. We can let it, take us down, right?
Right.
Or we can choose to find the magic in it. And when I say magic, I'm not talking hocus pocus, right? I'm talking about the magic that happens when we follow our heart's desire. And when we're willing to step out, even if we don't know what's going to happen, when we're willing to step out and venture into something new and something different. And I will say that requires that we embrace disruption as our BFF, our best friend. And that's not a concept that a lot of people,
Right.
would subscribe to, right? Would believe.
Because we want to kind of push disruption away and we want to run and hide. And all that does is sort of give it more power, right? And really puts our choice to the side if we are giving all the power to disruption and going against the flow instead of finding our flow with it.
Yeah, and I hope you notice, I hope your listeners notice that I'm using the word shift instead of change. Because we've all been told that change is the only constant in life, so really we should just get over it, right? And I'm like, the minute I hear or say change, guess what happens? It's like, immediate pushback, whether it's resistance from myself or from others. So I learned many years ago that if I just use the word shift instead of change, it lessened that resistance. And it's more like, when we say you've got to change or this situation has to change, we're really saying something's wrong, something's broken, something we've got to fix, right? When we say shift, it's more like just a natural evolutionary thing from one thing to the next, no fixing required.
I love that. I also love the visual that it gives. When you say shift, in my mind, I think perspective or
Mhm.
just a twist or versus like pick me up from here and put me way over here. It just
Yeah.
feels like it's a readjustment.
Yes. And let's face it, nothing significant ever happens for the better without some kind of disruption. Again, whether it's an external disruption or an internal disruption,
Right.
it takes something to shake things up so that, hopefully we can pause or even stop, from going 100 zillion miles an hour, being so busy being busy that we never really take the opportunity to pause, to stop, to reflect. Is what's going on in my life what I really want? And maybe, I know for me, it doesn't mean that what I'm doing now is necessarily wrong or bad
Hmm.
or whatever. It's just sometimes, well, often we have different chapters in our life.
Hmm.
And, when we get to a point where what we've been doing either isn't working anymore
Hmm.
or it's lost its meaning for us at this point. Again, we have this opportunity to say, okay, what else is possible?
Which brings me to the two questions that you ask yourself and you encourage your clients to ask themselves when they are facing a shift. What are those two questions that you ask?
Yeah, so I would preface it by saying that when shift happens, more often than not, it can feel impossible.
Mm,
It's like, is that really possible? Can I really do it? What if, what if, what if? And usually those what ifs aren't, like, what if it's going to succeed?
right. Our what
Right.
ifs tend to be a little awfulizing in our what ifs usually.
Yeah.
Yes.
So when it's feeling impossible, and I've had many of those moments in my life, when it feels impossible, we can ask ourselves two questions that can really create new possibilities. Number one, what if it is possible? I mean, we only see what we're looking for. And if we're
Right.
looking for all the reasons it won't work, it won't work. But what if we say, what if it is possible? Followed by, what am I not seeing yet?
Yet. I
And
love that.
that yet is so powerful and empowering because it acknowledges, no, it hasn't happened, but it hasn't happened yet. That doesn't mean it can't happen
Or it will never
or will
happen.
never happen.
Mhm,
Exactly.
mhm.
So yet is a very empowering word. It just leaves a door open that it could be possible. And in my own life, I know that when I ask those questions, it's
Mhm.
it's almost like magic. It's like all of a sudden I see things I never saw before. I see new possibilities. So whatever the doubts are,
Mhm.
it shifts the doubt, from a doubt to, okay, what will it look like when? or what am I not seeing that,
Mm-hmm.
and then it, like I said, it's just magical. And that's why I say, time to create a magical disruption.
Love that. What was it that motivated you to write this book, From Doubt to Do?
Well, as I said, I've had many moments in my life when I've faced some significant disruption. And in a few cases, I've decided I wanted to disrupt what was going on in my life. And of course, no matter how awesome what I think I want is, immediately the negative self talk, the doubts creep in. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
so many. And yet, when we ask those questions, when we're open to what else is possible, amazing things can happen. And they have happened for me. So everyone has always said, Kat, you should write a book. You've got all these great stories. You've done so many amazing, seemingly impossible things. But you know what? I was just, oh, so busy.
Mm-hmm.
And when COVID hit and things kind of came to a halt, I had one of those moments when it was like, oh my gosh, number one, I'm totally burned out. I was I was just so busy, I didn't even realize I was burned out.
Right. There
And
wasn't time to realize that you
yeah,
were burnt out. Yes.
yeah. So, when I realized I was burned out, it's like, oh my gosh, yeah, I really want to shift what I'm doing from, the kind of consulting and coaching and training and facilitating and all these doing things. I wanted to be able to be in a place where I could have some time to reflect on what was it? How did I do all those things? And what can I share with other people? And how can I broaden my reach, deepen the impact? And of course, living just outside of Los Angeles in the middle of the pandemic or at the beginning of the pandemic, the idea of completely changing what I was doing seemed impossible, primarily financially.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And yet, when I said, well, what if it is possible? What am I not seeing? The next day, I
The
see an
next
article.
day.
The next day, I see this article about a woman who retired, moved to Mexico, and was living on her fixed income. I'm like, really? I mean, first off, it's like, Mexico, really, Kat? Of course, all the assumptions, all the negative
Right.
stuff about Mexico. But then, my why was pretty strong. And so
Mm-hmm.
it was strong enough that I decided to kind of check it out. And lo and behold, it was a great solution, a great opportunity. So in the middle of the pandemic, we packed up and moved to Mexico.
I am so impressed that our assumption would be, oh, you can't travel during that time and they're not going to let you in. And, da, 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 da. And so, such a great example of how we stop in our tracks without, sometimes we allow our assumptions to stop us. And what I heard you say is, what am I not seeing yet? What if it is possible? And
Right.
what did it, you said we packed up and moved. So who
Yeah.
did you move with?
My husband.
So how possible was it? Obviously it was possible to talk him into it, but I would think that for some people it would be like, well, and my spouse is never going to want to do it. And like we make all these assumptions, right?
Yeah. Well, he's been retired for a long time. And he was, he had a life. I had my work. Never the twain shall meet. And we had a come to Jesus moment in terms of like, we're not going to live forever. And he's quite a bit older than me. And I'm like, if I want to have a real life with you, we need to be in a place where I have time, not just intention, but time
Right.
to be able to be with you and do things with you and whatnot. And so this is about the importance of a why. in making a decision. I was really clear about why this was so important on two levels. One, I wanted to make that shift in terms of my profession and what I was going to do next. And I wanted a life. And I wanted a life with my husband.
With him. Yeah.
Yes. And so, that once we got in touch with the opportunity for us to have more time together, it was kind of a no-brainer. It was like,
So good.
okay. And, there's, the yet aspect. And another aspect of that is like, I would ask myself, can I really do this? Can we really do this? And shifting to how can we do this?
Oh, so good.
And, yes, it was very challenging. I mean, working with the Mexican embassy and all the bureaucratic things of getting a visa,
Right.
to travel and then to even travel and everything that went around with that. But we also had been living in our home for me over 20 years, my husband over 30 years. We had to sell our home. We had 2 cars. We had a boat in Northern California. I mean, we let go of everything. I mean, we packed 8 suitcases and our golden retriever in a very large crate, got on a
And
plane,
left.
and in 3 months moved.
Wow.
It was a wild ride, and it was not without its challenges. But this again, when you ask the right questions, like how are we going to do this? So I'm a big proponent of working backwards. So we're like, if we're
Yeah,
going to
you
move
kind
in
of pick
3
your
months,
destination.
we need to
Yeah.
be on a plane October 10th, and now it's July. We had this huge board in our living room with 3 months of a calendar, and in each block, each day, what had to happen, working backwards, what had to happen by
That is
when
so good.
in order to make that date happen. And I'll tell you, it was providential because we were leaving on a Sunday, and the Friday before we left, we
Uh-huh.
went to the embassy to get the consulate to get our visas stamped. 3 days, 2 days before we're leaving, right?
Right,
That's how
right.
tight it was. And when we got there, their systems were down. And they're like, if it's not back by 1 o'clock, you're gonna have to come back on Monday. And I'm like, that's not an option. We're
That we
getting on
have
a
you on the
plane.
calendar for today. You don't
Yeah. And so
understand.
thankfully, by 1 o'clock, it did come up and we were able to get that stamp. The other factor, and I don't,
Wow.
didn't share this with you, but earlier that week, I thought, oh, I'm going to be a good girl before I leave. I'm going to get my annual mammogram and, get all this stuff out of the way. And I get the dreaded, um, we're concerned. You need to come in for a biopsy.
The week before you
The
left?
week before.
Oh my goodness.
And so I did. I had the biopsy, and they said, well, we'll have the results on Monday. You need to make an appointment. I'm like, I'm going to be in Mexico on Monday.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, you're
And not
not.
just for a vacation.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
moving to Mexico. We'll be there on Monday. So I'm going to be fine. You can call me and let me know what the results are. So we actually got on that plane without knowing what was
Wow.
happening.
Kat,
And
that is like
thankfully,
fate.
yeah, thankfully on Tuesday, I got a phone call and they said, it's okay. I just
Wow.
need to be more vigilant, every 6 months to get checked and blah, blah, which I've done since I've been here. Everything's fine.
Good.
Again, the why is so important because if I
Right.
hadn't had that why, there were so many things during that 3 months, let alone that last week, that it would have been really easy to say, it's okay. We don't need to do this.
Wow. Well, what a great story. What other, I know that your book is full of stories and anecdotes. And so For people listening who might have a book within them that they're still niggling around, one of the things I hear frequently is how do you even pick? Like of what how do you narrow down as an author the things you want to share? So I didn't tell you I was going to ask you this
That's
question, but you
okay.
told me I could ask any question.
I
So
did.
how
And
do you pick?
for me, Meg, it was the thing that drove it was this question. What if impossible is just a story you're telling yourself?
Mm,
And I wanted my book to answer that question and to share my stories, obviously, as an example, and to build
mm-hmm,
into those stories some nuggets of, insight, teaching lessons learned that
mm-hmm,
others could take from that. Um, and, I have over the years developed a framework, and it's my 4 C's, which is courage,
mm-hmm.
clarity, commitment, and capacity. And because that's been so successful for me personally, but also for my clients, using that as a framework to both strategize what they're going to do next. And then also on the back end, if things kind of go off track, to use it as a diagnostic tool of which of those 4 things are missing. So when I did my book, I purposefully used those 4 C's, like the stories to tell
Yes.
what does courage look like? What does clarity look like? What does commitment look like? What does capacity building look like? Um, Again, so that people not only are getting hopefully inspired to
Right.
challenge that story of it's impossible, but also have some tools to be able to help them in that journey. And it is a journey, it's a transformational journey from where we
Right.
are to whatever's next in our life. And that journey never ends, so we better enjoy it. That's the other thing,
Right.
we better enjoy that journey. uh, because every time I think I've figured it out, guess what? There's a new lesson.
Well, wouldn't it get boring if it isn't? I mean, I
Yeah,
get sometimes we're like, oh, but the things that are offered to us as challenges and opportunities really kind of keep life interesting and continue to stretch us into
yeah.
that shift.
Yeah. And, and in the book, I'm also, weaving in those doubts that we have and how to shift from
Right.
the doubt to doing something, therein from doubt to do, and navigating our pathway to possibility instead of letting the seemingly impossible stop us.
Love that. So if we were to take your 4 C's and we were to take this major shift that you did in your life and use you as an example, how would you say you walked through your 4 C's as
Okay.
you had this 3 months of calendar in your living room and all the other things that happened?
Okay, perfect. So let's start with courage, because without courage, let's face it, nothing else happens, right?
Right.
So it started with the courage to face the current reality and be honest with ourselves about, like, okay, what's life going to be like if we don't do it?
Mhm.
Whatever it is, in this case,
Right.
moving somewhere. And that just wasn't acceptable. It wasn't even possible. Financially, it was not possible. Um, and, having the courage to be willing to shift our mindset, to ask those questions, like, what if it is possible, really?
Mm-hmm.
And what are we not seeing? And being willing, being open. So having the courage to step out in faith, um, and begin the process. So first it's shifting your mindset. That's the courage.
Right.
Then in
Excellent.
terms of clarity, I mean, we got a super clear picture. Well, let me back up, actually. So when we decided we were going to need to move, we created a checklist of what that needed to look like in terms of, what's most important to, what would be a nice thing to have, what would be an
Mm-hmm.
awesome thing to have, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we had a very clear checklist, which became a filter when we started looking at where to move.
Oh, love that. And I just want everybody to hear, the clearer you can get, the more, like Kat says, that gives you a roadmap or that gives you a filter to use when, because you're going to have to make choices.
Yes.
And that clarity helps you make the best choice versus flying by the seat of your pants.
Yeah. And the things that were at the top of the list, obviously finance, which that
Mm-hmm.
article opened the door to seeing how Mexico might be an option. Then it was climate, because I'm a wuss. I want a nice climate. Okay. And the Lake Chapala area where we live now is like in the top 3 climates in the world.
Oh, wow.
National Geographic. Okay. So then it was like, oh, well, okay, let's focus on Lake Chapala. Okay. Then the next thing was safety. Is it safe? And of course, all
Mhm.
our friends are like, you can't move to
Move
Mexico.
to
It's not
Mexico.
safe. The cartels and da, da, da. Well, as it turns out, I feel safer here than we did at home.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We've been here over 3 years. We've seen no violence. We feel totally safe, protected, whatever. Okay.
Well, and I think like with any, you move to a place where there's high crime, like different areas of every country, there are areas of higher crime than others, unfortunately. And
Well,
so
when people
putting one
say,
country under one umbrella is kind
right.
of ridiculous.
Well, and when people say Mexico is not safe, I'm like, do you read your newspaper? Do you listen to the
Yeah.
news? I mean, how safe are you? How safe do you feel where you are? Okay. But anyway, so then we kind of, had some other things. But the thing that was like, it would be perfect if it was close to water and mountains. Those are 2 things that just like feed my soul.
Uh-huh.
So where we are living, I'm looking out my window. We see the largest lake in Mexico,
Wow.
and we are butt up against a beautiful mountain range. And there's another mountain range on the other side of the lake.
So you got both.
So, I mean, we were able to check off every single box,
And
but
this
we
all is
made
under your clarity seat.
so the clarity. So
Mm-hmm.
then it's all about not just clarity about what you want, but why you want it, which gets us back to the
Tapping
importance,
back into your motivator, your why. Yeah.
because that's what's going to lead to the commitment. And I'm not talking about lip service. I'm not talking about compliance. I'm talking about a hell yes commitment, unwavering. Because as I said, the 3 months before, there were many things, had we not had that strong why and weren't totally committed and had a date certain, we could have wavered. We could have said, okay, no. All right. So, commitment is key. And, we've been here over 3 years and, we have no regrets, none, zip, zero,
Mhm.
zilch. That doesn't mean it hasn't been challenging. We've had a lot
Right.
to learn, which leads us into capacity. So once you say, okay, you know, I have the courage, I have the clarity around the what and the why, I'm committed at a hell yes level, then it's just really about, what do I need to learn? What do I need to know? What do I need to do to prepare myself and to continue to prepare for this new reality? Because let's face it, I
Mhm.
mean, we moved to a foreign country with a foreign language, a different currency, a different banking system, a different.
Right.
So it's, I tell
And
people,
it's not as though you didn't have many years. I mean, some people say, well, when we're in our 20s, we can adjust more than, I mean, you also had many years of being in
Yes.
the United States with that system, and your husband even more years than you.
Yes. And, I tell people nowadays we need to learn into the future.
Oh, I love that.
Learn into the future, whether you're making a shift or not. The world is shifting and we need to be a lifelong learner.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this accelerated that considerably. I'm learning Spanish. I'm comfortable now with the currency and, we've, we've learned a lot since we've been here about the
Mm-hmm.
culture, about the people, about, living in a foreign country. And it's
Mm-hmm.
just been an incredible journey. And, we have an amazing community of other expats and Mexican families in our neighborhood
Mm-hmm.
that, we were so busy having a life, having friends. I mean, we might be friendly with our coworkers, we might have friends, but how often did we ever really get together and just do stuff? Not often. Here
When you were in the States.
in the States, here it's a
And
totally
now?
different story. It's just lovely. I love it.
So thank you for being sort of transparent and sharing your four C's up against your major shift. Um, and as we begin, unfortunately, already to wind down our time, would you want people like to walk away with out of everything we've talked about? What's the thing that you want them to hear clearest?
Back to that original question of what if impossible is just a story you're telling yourself? And what else will be possible when you open the door to something else is possible? And being willing to make the first step, which, let's face it, the first step is always the most challenging. We're walking into the unknown. And yet, unless we take that first step, it's never going to happen. Nothing's going to change. And are you really happy with that? And if not, once you make that first step, it's amazing how you begin to gain more confidence for the next step, more clarity about the next step, more commitment towards the next step, building more capacity to the next step, step by step. So I would say, what is one thing you could do today to move you one step closer to that thing that's tugging at your heart that you've been second guessing or that you think is impossible?
Oh, you just gave me goosebumps. So, with that, I strongly recommend that all of you find the links in either below this video for YouTube or in the show notes for at starcoachshow.com and find out what Kat's up to. Grab a copy of From Doubt to Do. Challenge yourself to think about what if it is possible and what are you not seeing yet? Such powerful questions. And because many of you who are listening are coaches, these are questions that you can challenge your clients to consider as well, just as Kat has for years.
Yeah, and I would say, as a coach, as a professional coach, I am not immune from having those same doubts. And I
Exactly.
imagine that many of those listening professional coaches have had moments in their life where they had a doubt, where they thought something was impossible, and they found their way through it. And,
Mhm.
how important is that then they're able to share that with their clients. And, we can't teach something we're not doing. And that's, that could be a bit of a reality check. I mean,
Right.
it's one thing to profess something, but if you haven't done it yourself, it doesn't have the
Mhm.
same weight. or impact.
So thank you so much for sharing your experience, for bringing your 4 C's forward, challenging us with these two powerful questions. And for all of you listening, I just want to invite you back each and every week to the Star Coach Show, where we explore strategies, tools, and resources for coaches and leaders. We have incredible guests like Kat O'Sullivan on to talk about their work in the world, to give you new things to consider and new ideas to experiment with so that you can make your impossible possible. Remember that we're all here on this earth together, whether we are living in Mexico, Canada, Germany, China, United States. We are all here together to do the heavy lifting together. So be kind to yourself and be kind
Yeah.
to others. And until next week, this is Meg Rentschler wishing you the very best for your success. Thanks for being here. And thanks again, Kat O'Sullivan.
Thank you.